everyone, to another exciting episode of We Empower. I'm thrilled to have you all with us today. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired. Let's make today count. In today's episode, we have a great guest here to introduce. It's Sebastian Klein, and I would like to tell you a lot more about him, but just for now, he's a serial entrepreneur, co-founder of Blinkist and New Narrative, joins us to explore wealth, purpose, and how to rethink success. So I'm looking forward to it. What a start into the show. Welcome, Sebastian Klein. Welcome to today's show, where innovation meets introspection.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Our guest is a thinker who doesn't just build companies, he rebuilds the way we think about work, wealth, and what really matters. Sebastian Klein co founded Blinkist, helping millions make knowledge part of their daily lives. He shaped New Narrative to challenge how we define leadership. And now, with Karma Capital, he's taking one of the biggest taboos of our time, wealth concentration, and its quiet war on democracy. Today, we explore how a curious mind, a rebellious heart, and a deep sense of responsibility can create not just startups, but systemic change. Sebastian Klein invites us to rethink what success looks like in a world on the brink. Are you ready to shift your narrative? Sebastian, we want to start with your song. So, when I watched that and looked and heard the sound and checked out the text, there came some ideas to my mind. What is your idea? What comes to your mind when you listen to this song?
Yeah, first of all, I think I told you that I was a little skeptical if the song is too weird or if it makes me look quite old because I took something from Tom Waits. But yeah, th this song I think describes pretty well my mood these days, and maybe it's a mood many people can relate to. This kind of feeling that the world is not moving into the right direction. So the song has this quite dark side, but then there's still this grain of hope and optimism in it, which I definitely have. I'm very optimistic in the long haul and still feel that many things in the world are maybe moving in the wrong direction right now. And yeah, the song is so Tom Waits made a theater play, a musical a while ago, and the song and this it's a very like dark play, Wojciech, about a story in a long time ago. And yeah, it's one of my favorite things to watch, even though it's rarely played these days anymore.
Great. I completely agree with you, or my feelings, my feedback listening to the song was the same, like having a kind of melancholy listening to this, but also a kind of universal longing, and also this idea of poetic beauty and simplicity, because he crafts a ballad that feels like a fable, using nature metaphors to paint love as something both eternal and fleeting, and that it's possible, even in a world like this, um, to see also the world not as it is, but as we wish it could be, and as the chances which are laying in each of us to get out of this melancholy, to get into simplicity and to get into understanding that it's something about the small little steps that each of us can do, like the butterfly, the wings of the butterfly, which can change the rice fields in China.
You said that very well, much better than I could have described it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is also something you combine words of startup, of that what people expect when they think about startups, like bang, bang, a lot of profit making, big deals, and big investors, big ideas. And on the other hand, this fine, sensitive um, idea about that we need new narrative, that we need no symbols, no algorithms, no metaphors to, because if we don't have the language for something and we can't describe it, we can't put it into it, it can't get into our feeling because it all needs to have words for us to grab it, to get an idea of it. And you are not only talking about it, you are just doing something about it and turns it into some different formats, which is great. And I really like how you do it. If we go to your roots, what kind of child were you? And did that kid already show signs of becoming a system thinker and a world changer?
Probably not. I think if you would ask my mother, she would say that I was a very impatient child, like with a lot of energy, but it didn't go in very constructive alleys, I think, when I was small. I didn't enjoy school very much. Like so, yeah, I often had this feeling of not fitting 100% in. And
Mm.
I think things are a little bit different now, but back when I went to school in Germany, it felt very much like still from from the old days when the Prussians needed good underlings, and I didn't like that training of being an underling. Um, but yeah, I didn't do anything spectacular when I was a child, so there were definitely no signs of being a system thinker or entrepreneur later.
But was there a first a kind of key moment when you questioned these traditional things, where you said, for example, the Prussian traditional thinking of education, of creating soldiers, for example, creating people who follow, um, of people who have to ask a question if they want to know if they are allowed to think, think about own ideas. Was there a kind of point of point where you said, "Yes, I'm right," and that I'm questioning, I'm right, and that I don't like the system, and I'm right in behaving against it?
So I think one characteristic I probably kept from quite young age is this kind of always asking why. So I don't accept anything before I understand, or I never do anything without understanding why I should be doing it. Which I think in school and also in my first job was kind of a problem. Um, but yeah, especially when I grew up in a rural part of Bavaria, quite conservative, very Catholic region, and I went out to study somewhere else in like quite a progressive university city, and that I think that was pretty different because there I met lots of people who were always asking why and loved to contemplate about why things should be different and how things should be, and that I think this was the first time I experienced, okay, things can be different.
Mm. Bavaria is well known for tradition, also in the rural areas, especially for traditional thinking, traditional beliefs and things, concepts, where wealth is often number one, but also values, church, religion. Um, was there a special moment where you figured out that, yes, this is something which doesn't have to stand like it is, as people say it? Was there a special situation in your life where you figured this out? That money, work, purpose is something which doesn't have to stay as the system says?
So I had this experience. I studied psychology, so I had almost 6 years thinking about how humans function, how they thrive, like what motivates them, and how people can help each other. And then my first job was in management consulting, so I went to work for Boston Consulting because I was pretty ambitious and wanted to move fast and wanted to go where the big decisions were made. And all the jobs psychology had to offer were more like, okay, you have to start small and then work for 10 years, and then maybe at some point someone will start listening to you. So that was not the right thing for me. But then when I went into management consulting, working with like more senior consultants and also like managers or like executives in the industry, I was surrounded by people who were very much defined by like material things and only motivated through money and power. And I pretty quickly had this impression that like they were not necessarily smarter than the average guy on the street. Definitely more ambitious and more egoistic, but they also weren't very happy. Like to me, most of the people I met there seemed pretty unhappy, to be honest. So and I was also getting pretty unhappy when I had to work 80 hours weeks and like work long hours for people to help people get wealthier who are already too wealthy. So I think this was my moment when I realized, okay, this is definitely not how I want to spend my life.
Great, because a lot of people talk about it, but don't get it really. But feeling it, being in the situation, working with these people, and then understand what also make them sick, what make them ill, and what makes then our society ill. Having these people, and many of them, because they're stabilizing the system. This is, I think, is really great because you felt it. And if you think about, I mean, you were employee, right? So the
Yes.
step from employee to being an employer to start something new, a lot of people are just talking for ages about being an employer and starting a startup, and they have great ideas, and they will never, never, never do it. Um, where did you get the braveness from, the passion for, and everything what you need to be somebody who is an entrepreneur, because it needs a set of some qualities, right?
Probably yes, but then also I don't think it's right for everyone. And like for me, for instance, if you would go back to my mother and ask her, she would always have said he's not going to be a good employee because, and it's true, I don't like working for others, so entrepreneur is one of the options that leaves. And I also love to work with teams. I don't like having a boss, and but I still like to work with teams.
Mm.
Um, and then I think, relating to what you said, in Germany, most people, as you say, are talking about starting something. And I think we are also not really getting trained in terms of what does entrepreneurialism mean. So most people
Mm-hmm.
think having an idea, this is like all it takes, even though the idea is nothing, like afterwards starts to work. And I think I had this phase in my 20s where I thought, okay, I just have to come up with ideas and then basically that's it. So while I was studying, I was already playing around with first ideas, and they all failed. Like nothing came out, or nothing, no business model came out of it. Um, and then after I had this pretty traumatizing work experience as a management consulting, I was pretty clear, okay, now I have to start something on my own.
Great. Blinkist, you founded, changed how we consume knowledge. What knowledge first changed you?
So while I was studying, I mean, it was a real privilege to study psychology, and at the same time, I had this appetite for other fields, and
Mm-hmm.
I really kept buying these books, like nonfiction books, especially
Mm-hmm.
like business books, like especially these American business books promising to change my life when I read them. So I bought loads of them, and then I couldn't really finish most of them. So I had this huge pile of unfinished books. And that was basically this starting point for thinking about book summaries. But yeah, back then when I studied, I read some really good books as well. Like there's one small book called The Power of Less by a guy called Leo Babauta, and it still keeps influencing me, even though I've read it 15 years ago.
Great. That sounds really challenging. And were there also any failures which were challenging you, or which were also giving you the motivation to drive further, to act better? Because you said you tried a lot of things, and it's great that you are sharing this with us. Because a lot of the people are frightened about that, especially in Germany, where in other countries they are celebrating this.
Yeah, in Germany, failure is not celebrated, which I think is a problem. But yeah, when I left my consulting job, I had one good friend, and we were both really traumatized by our first work experience. Or let's not say traumatized. People having serious traumas is not something I want to compare it with, but it was like not a good experience. And we said, okay, we really have to get rich quickly so we don't have to work anymore. And then we started looking for a product we can start selling pretty soon, and thought like, okay, by the end of the year, we have to be rich. And what we came up were cooling scarves. They're still online to be found, called penguin hugs.
Mm.
So they have the same crystals as diapers, and then you
Mhm.
soak them with water and they cool you in the summer. We didn't get rich, like we only sold a few hundred of them, so that was a total failure. But
But
then
nice idea.
afterwards, we started Blinkist, yes.
Very nice idea. Do you have some also at home to cool you down on these days?
I still have some at home. I hope they will sell for millions at some point as kind of like collector's pieces. But yeah, right now,
Maybe you just have to put signatures on it, and then,
yes.
or maybe artists painting it. Yeah. So thank you so much. I'm happy to continue the conversation with Sebastian Klein, the founder of Blinkist and New Narrative. So we just talked before the break about your purpose, about your braveness, about the first steps also to make into the world of entrepreneurship. And you said that it was also a kind of deep decision, so I understood it, um, something which came out of the experience you made at BCG with consulting, with seeing the other people working for something and somebody to just get more wealthy, but without a purpose often. Um, we, or I would like to step now more into also the other side of you. You started a new narrative. And I mean, I'm somebody coming from communication, and I did a therapy on writing and reading and on rewriting your own biography because I really deeply, I'm deeply convinced that we can change our system by changing our narratives. Can you share with me and share with us here your ideas on how new narrative started, and maybe also one situation which brought you there? Of course, a lot of people are talking about things, but don't put things into real, right?
Yes, and I mean, you called it braveness. I think you could also call it stupidity or like ignorance. Because I think, I mean, many of these decisions by hindsight, they can look like great decisions, but actually maybe they were quite stupid. And start like as you say, Neue Narrative is the German term, and we're only publishing in German right now. It's a print magazine, and starting a print magazine in 2017 is not a very smart idea. It's just like it's such a very hard business model.
Mhm.
Um, but we like I had been with Blinkist, we had been making digital content and an app. And like I really love print content. For me, like I love books and I love magazines. And
Mhm.
going back to print was or not going back because I had never done print before, but going into print was like a really important thing for me. And now you're asking about like a scene or like an experience where it happened. So my later co-founder, Lena, she had this idea of doing a magazine, and I was at that time more like consulting and training people about new ways of working. So I was pretty convinced after I had left, after I had stopped working with Blinkist, I was pretty convinced that like changing the way people work is like the next field I want to go into. So I worked with many companies, trained them, consulted them. Um, and Lena had this idea of making a magazine about it. And just like, so a few people came together saying, let's just do one magazine. And in the process, like new people came, some people left, and it was a lot of work. And we printed 10,000 pieces and sold maybe 500 of them. So there are also still a lot of these number one magazines not in my basement, but in someone's basement. Um, so yeah, but I think this is something probably you need for any kind of entrepreneurialism, because this kind of overestimating your own abilities and overestimating how successful you become quickly, I think in a way you need it, or at least for me, it was always a part of doing that.
Um, I think you need to do it also because trying is the first before knowing, right? And if you don't fail, you don't know. And failure is a great learning concept from my point of view. I paid a lot for that by myself, but I, I like each and every of this failure because it made me growing that much. Um, and I mean, it is not just about a failure. You have another idea than a lot of Germans, but you have also another idea of many Germans about hierarchy. You wrote a book which called Toxisch Reich, which means toxic wealthy, and I like it. I read it, and I told many people to buy it because you show with analysis how how much we underestimate the problem of extreme wealth. It's interesting because I think none of the people who don't know you well thought that a book like this would have been written by you. But how did your own leadership style evolve as you began questioning hierarchy and wealth? What has it made with you, and was there a tipping point um, when it started?
That's a good question. So my development there was that I was always reinvesting every euro I had into my entrepreneurial activity. So I was really always broke until I was in my mid 30s and always had to like borrow money or like go into debt. And then
Mm.
after Blinkist got successful, I sold some of my shares and then later some more. So I had this um, like development from like being totally broke to then having like 400,000 euros in my bank account and then like 1 year later 1 million. Um, and I just observed what that did to me. And
Mhm.
there was this like really pleasant feeling of, okay, now I feel secure. Like money is no longer something that makes me be anxious or like feel like I can't do anything that I want to do.
Mhm.
Um, and then I also observed that I started then thinking more about, okay, now I have 1 million. How can I turn this million into five? And I still have Blinkist shares. For how much money can I sell them later? And then I started comparing myself with people who had more money. And I mean, if you have 1 or 5 million or 10 million, you will always find someone who has much more money than you. So that's a very bad game to play. And then
Mhm.
I also started realizing, okay, we have so many problems in the world. Like, let's just take climate change as one example, problems that can be solved with money, but most of the money is just used to create more money and like accelerating the problems we have. So this was one thing. And then I also started reading Thomas Piketty's book about inequality, and that was eye-opening for me because I hadn't thought about it before. And then for me, it was clear like, okay, this is another huge problem we have, and one that really has the potential of destroying our
Mhm.
democracies or turn us back into like pre-democratic times. And now, yeah, you mentioned the book. I wrote it last year. The subtitle is Why Extreme Wealth is Threatening Our Democracies. I thought that would be a provocative thesis last year. Now, after Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Peter Thiel, I think nobody is or hardly anybody is doubting that extreme wealth is a threat to democracy anymore.
Exactly, I completely agree with you. And how do you think can this be changed? Because as you said, if you gain money or you get money, it is a kind of yeah, we know it from stories where the people get where the comic figures get money and then they turn into some weird figures like ooh, I need more and get crazy and you think, oh my God, what happened to this person? And you know, maybe also from people around you in the startup industry. Getting money and then feeling like somebody else, people which has no strong self-awareness, they get into this and into these difficulties of mm, having the wealth, being wealthiness is a kind of god, isn't it? Something which where they think that they're not now somebody different.
Yeah, I mean, where should I start? It's such a huge topic, and I
Yeah.
think we, at least in Germany, we just start discussing it. And when you ask how we can change it, there's so many ways how we can talk about it, but one of the initiatives I'm supporting is called Tax Me Now. I think in the UK there's a similar organization called Millionaires for Humanity, and
Mhm.
what we do is like we are wealthy people lobbying for higher taxes on wealthy people, because like tax systems is something that is there, like it's part of our democracy. We can change it. And
Mhm.
I'm surprised that in Germany, I'm wondering why not every week millions of people go to the street protesting, because we have a tax system where people working for their income have to pay a lot of taxes, and people who get their income from inheritance and from existing wealth, they have to pay very low taxes, often almost zero.
Yeah.
And like I'm really wondering, and there's also consumption taxes, so people who, use their income to consume and they can save up. So they pay a lot of taxes. They're bearing the burden of the whole social state. And I'm really surprised that not more of them go to the street every week protesting and saying like, hey, we want to change the system, which is something that could be done anytime.
I completely agree with you. And what do you think? Why is it so hard for us to talk about it, to talk about money, even even in progressive circles, even on the street, even with each other?
I mean, at least in Germany, it's so much part of the culture to not talk about it.
Yes.
So, and also like, of course, money comes with lots of beliefs and like things we have inherited from our families and from our upbringing and lots of like feelings that might be unpleasant. So for me, it was also in the beginning very unpleasant to talk about it. And I still have these feelings sometimes like, is it weird to go out talking about it, talking about my own wealth, talking about what I do with it? And
Mhm.
so I still, even though I've been trying to overcome that for years now, I still have this. And I think many people have this even more in a more extreme way.
I think so too. And I mean, you're talking very openly about this, also about struggling with this in contact to other people. And you founded Karma Capital. What does karma mean in the context of Karma Capital?
So first of all, I hope no one is seeing that as too much of cultural appropriation that we're using this term. But for me, like karma capital was like more of a marketing way of showing that okay, here this is not about like turning money into more money. It's more about what karma means that actions have consequences and that we can use money for being like the accelerator of the problems, or we can use money of being part of the solution. So what we try to do with Karma Capital is go into this field of the financial world, financial market, which at this stage is extremely extractive. So the financial market goes everywhere and extracts values and gives it to the people who have a lot of money and capital already. And I think if we want to solve big problems like the climate crisis, then we have to change the financial markets. There's no way around it. So what we're trying to do is to show that within the financial market, you can act like humans would normally do, because what financial market actors usually do is they don't act like humans, they act like psychopaths. They only look for their own interest, which is something we would never accept in, or, you know, if you had a neighbor or a friend or a relative who would act like the financial market, then you would just not want to have to do with this person anymore.
Okay.
And of course, you can also start, for instance, we start funds, one fund that is only investing into steward-owned companies, and which means that we're trying to strengthen a part of the economy that we think is a force for good. And people who invest into this, they will still get like a small profit, but it's not like a huge profit, and the profit is not why we're doing it. It's more about it's using capital to change the economy for the good, using capital for it. And that's, I think, how we have to approach investing in the future if we want to make investing also part of the solution.
I completely agree with you. But of course, it turns up the question or pops up the question if it's possible to build truly fair companies inside an unfair system.
It's definitely hard. Like really, I mean, I meet every week, I talk to people who are struggling with this, trying to do the right thing, and then they work a lot. They get just also often very little money for it, what they're
Mm.
doing. Why I think a niche like steward ownership is something that can be like a great lever for this. Is this like this is already an existing niche in the economy. The companies who use this structure, they still work for profit, but you just have this way of ensuring that no external stakeholder is just extracting all the value. So you're just using the positive aspects of capitalism, but like hedging yourself against the negative parts of it. So I think
Mm.
this can work. But yeah, as you say, within an unfair system, it's definitely harder to build something that is good or fair.
Mm. Because you don't want to be part of the system, but you have to be part of the system to play in it. And transforming a system which is toxic and stable and its toxinous is even sometimes harder than building a new one. But building a new one means that you are not working with the old one and stepping out of this, which means that acceptance fails. and society sticks in the old one. So this means then being a foreigner, right? I mean, you're thinking about so many things. You're thinking so deep about things, which makes it, I think, could make it sometimes hard to get up. What daily practice or mindset shift has made the biggest difference in your life? And do you want to share some hacks with us, which makes you staying up happy? And also, if you know that there is so much struggling in the world.
I have to say, like, it was never easier for me to get up in the mornings than today because I feel that I'm so privileged to do this work and it's so much fun and yeah, feels like a privilege.
Mhm.
Mm, I think I at some point had this realization thinking that, okay, the worst that can happen to me is that when I'm 70 or 80, I look back and regret and think, ah, I should have moved faster. I should have like tried to act on what I had already understood. And this is the one thing I try to avoid. And this is also why I always realign my work. And I mean, I have to say, I'm very privileged to do this. Most people can't just quit their job and try to change the system. And because I can do that, I want to use this privilege. And now that you ask for routines or hacks, so every morning I drink tea with my girlfriend. We have this
Mhm.
routine of like really taking long time to do like a proper tea ceremony and talk to each other.
Nice.
And this is very anchoring for me.
This sounds really nice because I think it's the small little things you implement in your life, which are in a life like you have, are the most important because trying to do the big things often fails, right? Um, Unfortunately, we have just one last question, because then we finished our talk. Unfortunately, maybe we should go for a second talk when your book gets into an English translation, and it's easier to share it here also with the listeners. But if you would give me the chance to ask you one more question, what do you want your legacy to be, and what would you like to share with our listeners here before we close?
So my legacy is hopefully, I mean, for me, it's really important to say that like we have so many good people and so many also resourceful people who can be part of the solution. You know, some people have money, some people have other resources, and everyone can be part of the solution. I totally understand that some people who have a hard time getting over the day and getting to feed their children, that's much harder to be part of the solution. What I would love to see is that more people who have, for instance, a lot of money or some money or other resources understand that, okay, I have more responsibility to try to move this whole system to the better. And yeah, I hope I will have a small contribution, but there are so many more people, and I think it's more important to empower many people than to try to be the one hero like fixing everything because that's not possible anyway.
Thank you very much indeed for the engaging discussion and the inspiring insights you gave us here. I look forward to our ongoing exchange and the impact we will continue to make together the world a better place. So, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks a lot for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.